Greetings. My name is Landon Porter. I am the author of the fantasy series Runebreaker and the superhero series The Descendants. And today I am here to speak to you as the designer of the World of Air role-playing game. And I'm actually here to talk to you right now about why you want to see the World of Air role-playing game come to life and why you would want to help fund such a thing. After all, there are many fantasy role-playing games already out there on the market, and a lot of people would ask, why another one? Is this going to be another fantasy heartbreaker that just tries to be a copy of D&D? Or is it going to be something that I really want to sink my teeth in and play, maybe not instead of D&D, but alongside it? Because many of us nowadays can enjoy multiple role-playing games at the same time. So with that in mind, we'll want to explore the similarities and differences from your basic fantasy role-playing games, specifically D&D and Pathfinder, because that's what most people are familiar with. And in truth, World of Air D20 is based in part on the D20 SRD that many games of the past few decades have been based on. But it takes its approach mostly from the ideas that started with D&D 4th edition without actually taking the entirety of 4th edition on. The idea of narrative control, for example, is very important. The idea of having the encounter as the basic segment of an adventure in a campaign, that's where it comes from. At the same time, though, this game is a vast departure from what you think of in terms of D&D once you get past the core mechanics of roll a d20, add modifiers, get a result. For example, 4th edition had the concept of the tiers, your heroic, paragon, and epic. World of Air D20 also has 3 tiers of play, but it makes much more use of the actual concept of tiers. For World of Air D20, we're going to have 1 to 8, 9 to 17, and then 18 to 20 as the tiers. The idea being that most groups generally don't hang around in the super high levels for very long. So so what would be called in 4th edition the epic level doesn't go that high. Now, in the future, I may expand what the higher tier goes to. We could go 18 to 27 to keep the symmetry, or we could do beyond. However, right now, we're working with expanding the character's horizons from at 9th level and at 18th level. Those are the basic conceits of the game. Now, what do I mean when I say that we're going to be using the tiers more extensively? Well, the idea here is that everything works based on those tiers. Spellcasters no longer have 9 levels of spells. They have 3 tiers of spells, along the same lines as the tiers of play. They can choose any spell within the tiers that they have access to. So if you're a 1 through 8th level wizard, mage in this game, you'll be choosing from 1st tier spells. And these spells are designed to scale. Every spell, every technique, which I'll be getting to soon, every feat is designed in some way to either give you an ability that will be useful through your entire career, or it will scale up as you go up in your tiers. This allows for if you want to play in that first tier, 1 through 8, you'll have a very smooth balance of power. Instead of, 3rd level spells coming online at level 4, and, now you have to deal with everyone flying, your wizards flying everywhere and chucking fireballs. Well, they've always had the basic fireball at 1st tier, and they may have picked it up, but they haven't actually grown in power. In World of Air, until you change tiers, you don't grow in power, you grow in the variety of what you do. You grow in flexibility, your capabilities. And while that may mean that you'll get feats that actually make you more powerful at certain things, it just means that you're going to be slightly more powerful, but essentially more competent at what it is, instead of making a massive jump from how powerful you were to how powerful you are now that you've just gained 1 level. Speaking of power disparities, I'm making no illusions that the linear fighter quadratic wizard problem was a problem. The idea that martial characters can't have nice things simply because they have mundane attacks. In World of Air, martial characters get techniques. Techniques work essentially along the same mechanics as spells, but they have quote-unquote mundane explanations. Where the wizard casts a fireball, your archer will have a snipe attack, or your warrior will have a very powerful chop with his axe, or you'll have a sweep that drops people like a trip. Um, the wizards, both wizards and warriors, have a resource that they use in order to do this, and this is what differentiates them. A wizard has spell points. Spell points come back at a small amount, a quarter of your total spell points, every time you take. For the World of Air setting in game, a short rest is going to be essentially 10 minutes. It just means that between encounters, you get these points back. For the martial characters, they have fatigue points. Fatigue points recharge entirely when you take a short rest. That means that for your martial characters, their fatigue points, their techniques, are a per encounter resource. Meanwhile, spellcasters have more of a daily resource that gets a little bit back per encounter. It means that when you play these two different types of characters, you have different kinds of balancing actions that you want to do. A martial character, if they really, really want to take something down, can alpha strike something, put everything they have into that attack, and then they'll get it back at the end of the encounter. Meanwhile, the wizard does not have that luxury because they will not gain everything back. It creates a different sort of paradigm of balance than has been used before. With Vancian Magic, the idea was that it was a daily cost, but since they never got anything back, you would have the 5-minute workday problem where the wizard would nova everything and then they'd have nothing left and everyone had to stop. This way, everyone can stay in the game for longer. There are wizard spells that in 4th edition would be called at will. They're just free spell point free cost in this edition. It's a weaker ability, but it means that the wizard is never going to be run out of magic. There will always be, when the wizard is doing stuff, they're doing magic stuff. We're also using rituals again. Rituals, in case you don't know, a ritual it's a spell-like effect that takes longer than would typically work in a combat. And these are useful for your utility spells. You're never going to have your wizard decide if they want to go in with their fireball or if they want to have, a spell that can move your ship faster with wind. That's not a problem anymore because you can buy as many rituals as you want. You don't even have to be a wizard to use rituals. You don't even have to have a feat to use rituals. The ritualist feat gives you a ritual book that lets you research rituals and get new ones. But anyone can buy a ritual and perform a ritual as long as they have spellcraft as a skill. So that is how we're treating magic. We're trying to rein it back in, but we're not going to do the thing that a lot of places do by declaring low magic and heavy magic really weak in order to allow the mundane characters to shine. No, we're letting the mundane characters shine just as much as the magical characters. Now, speaking of characters, the basic building block of a character in World of Air is it's a mechanic that came around in 3rd edition D&D, and it's spread throughout the entire D20 ecosystem, but I always felt that it was really underutilized, and that would be feats. Most of the time when you have feats, they're either so lackluster that it really doesn't matter that you have them because they just add a +2 or a +1 to something, or they allow you to do something that you should have been able to do, but it had a huge penalty in order to make the feat worthwhile. Or they would be something that the good feat was at the end of a chain of really, again, lackluster feats. So for World of Air D20, we're approaching feats as if they were the key building block of building a character. Never again are you going to get a feat that just gives you a plus blah to something. Every feat you get increases your capabilities. They either make something easier to do, and there will be some that give you pluses, but they will do more. They will give you a plus and allow you to do something else. Or they will actually give you an ability. The abilities will be things like, for example, There is no ranger in World of Ere D20. What it is there are some rogue bonus feats that allow you to take on ranger-like traits, including traps. You have a trapper feat that gives you the ability to make a number of traps. You also have a poisoner feat that gives you the ability to mix poisons. Instead of having to go and buy the poison, the feat assumes that you have the materials and you can make the poison. Once per encounter, you can poison someone. Once per encounter, you can make a sleep bomb and knock people out. That's how World of Ere D20 works with feats. Your feat lets you do things. There are things. I have an ability called Chemical Soldier, which lets you make alchemical devices. Things like your classic Alchemist Fire, while another character can buy it. If you're a Chemical Soldier and you've bought up your Chemical Soldier feats, you'll have been able to really quickly mix up an alchemical flask to throw at people. A friend of mine told me that it was a lot like Honey Lemon in Big Hero 6. So, once I saw the film, I understood why, because it's very much like that. It's having the Chemical Soldier feat allows you to just mix what you need on the site and use it. I really think that gives you more control of your character, because before you really couldn't, both from a design standpoint and a character standpoint, when you had to go out and buy all of your alchemical reagents and take this time and use a formula to make them, or you had to lug them around all the time, you had to care about, how much they weighed. I felt it took away a lot of the fun of being able to be that kind of character. So here we are, we're making these things more accessible, especially tool-using characters. They can get their tools as feats, and it's just a thing that they have. I believe a lot of people will probably wonder at this point what I'm doing with magic. Magic, much like everything else, the idea here is that you're going to be awesome and have lots of fun at level 1 all the way up. So you're not going to have, I just started and I just know Magic Missile and Mending, and I do my little 1d4. No. At first level, let me tell you a few things that a mage can do. A mage can suffocate someone. They can cast a spell and go all Zahir from Legend of Korra and pull the air out of that person's lungs. It takes longer at lower levels to actually do it, and they get a chance to break out. We have a save ends mechanic in this. It's not, roll 50-50 and see if they get out. They are actually rolling a fortitude or will or reflex save to get out. But they have a chance to break out. It becomes less of a chance to break out the higher your level is. But at first level, you can suffocate someone. You have a basic fireball. It's an area attack. It bursts into flames. Using feats, you can become a pyromancer who has an aura that makes things light on fire just by you being there when you have it up. Or you can be a cryomancer, which turns all of your fire spells into freezing spells. Other things you can create, there's a spell called Plane of Force, where you can create a Plane of Force that you can use as a shield, or you can drape it around yourself as armor, or you can turn it into a blade that you launch at people. You have a Wind Ride, which lets you ride on a tornado. It's super loud, and everyone will know that you're there, but you'll be riding 20 feet in the air on a tornado. It's stuff like that that makes World of Ere magic into something more than what your typical low-level, low-magic stuff is. World of Ere is a very high-magic world. There are magic and technology have combined. It's a lot like Eberron in that sense, but it goes a little bit farther in the context, because the date in the setting is technologically around the 1860s. So it's more like Wild West or Victorian England. It has a very steampunk feel to it, and so the magic has to keep up, because the magic is something that people study in this world, and people have studied and they've tuned their magic to what they need and what they want. So even low-level magic is going to be super useful. Like I was talking about the rituals, your World of Ere equivalent of the Boy Scouts will have a little ritual book that lets them create water, that lets them create fire, that lets them heal minor wounds. That's how this world rolls, really. But I don't want you to think that just because magic is powerful at first level. It's useful at first level. That's all there is. On the martial side of things, once again, I said we have techniques. Martials learn fewer techniques, but like I said, that's balanced by the fact that they're never going to run out. Once the encounter is over, they replenish their fatigue points, and they can go apeshit on you with techniques. Sorry. But at the same time, you can also get more techniques as feats. There's literally just a feat called bonus technique. Some of these techniques are, I've got one called Bring Them Down, which the second you hit somebody, you immediately try to make a trip check. And to make trip checks easier, I have adopted and modified the combat maneuver defense from the Pathfinder SRD. Bonus and defense. I've gotten rid of the idea that they add both their strength and their dex, which made every maneuver useless, and now you add your strength or dex, whichever is higher. It's a straight check for all of these. Opposed roll. If you pass or fail, the person trips. The person is grabbed. The person is pushed. The person is repositioned. And those are all basic techniques that cost nothing. Anyone can use them. Like I said, every character has fatigue points. Every character has spell points. They don't necessarily have the means to use them. But they're there because spell points also power magic items, and fatigue points also power certain skill uses, which we'll get to in a later video. The main philosophy here is that you will be able to do the cool things that you read in modern fantasy novels right out of the gate. Your characters are not pig farmers that just picked up a sword. These are, maybe they're not heroes, but they are professionals. They are people that know what they're doing. They're experienced individuals. Later down the road, I may introduce additional content to play those lower level, weaker characters. But my idea is mostly for people like me, people that didn't like the idea of having to slog through levels 1 through 5 in order to get to do something cool, to be able to do something cool right out of the bat and not have to essentially, for somebody like me that liked the higher levels, to waste a quarter of the game that they paid for, with stuff that was boring and slow. And I want this to be a very kinetic world, a very interesting. Every round, every time a character does something, it's something interesting. Even if it's just your basic strike or attack, it can become something more. I have a mechanic which I think I should discuss here instead of putting it in another video, called the basic strike. Basic strikes are your basic attacks like they were in 4th edition. It's just your default thing. However, the basic strike is also the core element of your attack. Whenever you get an extra attack from your base attack bonus, which we don't actually do that, every class has a place where they will get an extra attack as they level up. But when you get an extra attack, that gives you another basic strike. When you make a full attack, it gives you basic strikes. Your attack of opportunity is a basic strike. Now, at the same time, a lot of your techniques will say this technique can be used in place of a basic strike. Some of the base techniques, the ones that cost nothing that anyone can use, also say this can be used instead of a basic strike. For example, the grab, which initiates the grapple, can be used as a basic strike. The actual grapple is a basic strike. So you can chain these together because you have some feats and abilities that will say, for example, 2-weapon fighting says when you make a basic strike, instead make 2 basic strikes. Because make 1 basic strike with your main weapon, make 1 basic strike with your offhand weapon. That means that you can then chain that, if you're using your bare hands, to use 1 hand to grab and the other hand to initiate a grapple, all in 1 turn. And again, the grapple rules are not this archaic slog. It's literally just an opposed check to grab, an opposed check to grapple. Done. I don't know why this was so difficult to do, and I'm not saying I'm a genius for doing it. I just think that a lot of people thought it should be more difficult for some concept of realism, which I'm going to say flat out, the concept of realism, what a lot of people will call simulationism, is not a goal for World of Ere D20. World of Ere D20 is supposed to simulate not really simulate. It's supposed to put you in the mindset of a fantasy movie, a fantasy novel. It's not supposed to be Earth with just a little bit of magic on top of it. This is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be interesting. And I want people to have a lot of fun with this. I want people to be able to tell stories about their game from level 1 where they were able to, because they picked the cool feats and the cool class that they like, they were able to punch an ogre and their hand exploded into flames and sent the ogre 5 feet back. I want them to talk about how they pulled a copper coin out of their purse and fired it like a rail gun, and it just blew a bandit in half. That's the kind of stuff that I want to do. I want to make fantasy gaming as fun as I possibly can, and with your help, I hope to be able to do that. On IndieGoGo, I am asking for $2,000 to be able to produce this work, to get good playtesting on it, to be able to get illustrations, to be able to produce books. I really believe in what I'm doing here. The product is, I would say, 75% developed pre-playtesting. Anyone who helps fund this, donates any amount of money, they will get the playtest version. Anyone who donates $5 or more will get the final version, and anyone that gives $20 or more will not only get the final version, they will get every additional piece of content that I produce. I will talk in later videos about the individual classes, the skill and expertise system, other things that I think that you'll be interested in, but for now, this is my pitch. I hope you have been inspired. Hope you feel like this is something you want to be a part of. And I thank you for your time.